Welcome, YouTube. This your man Slick. This is Detroit's darkest times. Today we're going to talk about an event on Otis and Livernois and Otis and military. Above the Big D's bar. Above the Big D's bar was two apartments. One side, we had a friend over there, a woman named Trish, and she lived there with her kids. And sometimes her brother came and stayed with her, and he was all right, dude. He actually had two women that was with him when he'd come and stay with her, and she had an extra room, so she'd give him a room to stay in. He stayed with her for a little while, and he was dating a white girl and a dark skinned girl. And when I first met him, I thought he was lucky, to have two women at the same time. But I don't think he was married to either one of them. I think he was just going with them, and they was just both his girlfriends. And I think he told me how it took place as they was all roommates one time, and then they all just ended up hooking up together. Anyways, Trish, she was a all right girl, and sometimes she'd have me and a friend of mine do things for her, stuff like that for money, and go to the store for her, whatever, because she had small kids. She couldn't leave them at home, and a lot of times her brother and his girlfriends they wouldn't stay home. They would stay gone and come in at nighttime. And but they didn't live with her the whole time she lived up there. It was just a period of time they stayed with her. And I had a chance to meet him, his two girlfriends, and Trish. She had old man. She had I don't think she's married a dude, but I think it was her boyfriend. He lived in Canada, in Windsor, Canada. And every so often, she would take a bus and go over to Windsor, Canada, and visit with him, stay with him for a few days, whatever, and then come back. Now, I think she told me the reason he lived in Canada is because he used to be in the States and he had gotten in trouble, something like that, and he ended up moving to Canada. She told me the story, but it's kind of fuzzy because it was a minute ago. But it was something like that, and that's the reason she would take the bus and go visit him, stuff like that. And we stayed across the hall at Big D's bar, and stayed there for a little while. And I met a few people while I was there. Then we used to go visit a friend of ours. They lived on above Miska's bar, and this is on Otis and military. And his name's Bobby, and his wife's name's Gail. And that's when I had first met them, when they lived above Miska's bar. And we used to go over there like on the weekends and have some drinks, whatever. One time I'm over there and he's got another dude that lives in the front apartment, and he called him Uncle Bob. I'm not for sure if it was his real uncle or that's just what he called him. But he had introduced me to him and his wife and his daughter, and he was a cool guy. And over time, I partied with him also. And actually, his daughter ended up being friends with one of my younger sisters because they had went to the same school. And so I used to visit him here and there. And Bobby and Gail, when I first met them, they lived above Miska's bar, and you know, I just liked how friendly they was and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. So me and Bob, we became friends and stayed friends to this day, and also his wife too, and his kids, and but now his kids are grown and stuff like that. But I've known them for a lot of years, and then also not too long after that, I met his brother, Mike, and that was Michael David. Then I met him, and then we started hanging out together, running around together, stuff like that. And we used to do a lot of different things, I remember one time at Jim Pollard's store, they're in their basement, they kept a lot of stock and stuff like that. And he wanted to know if he had like the drains in the floor, and I guess they got stopped up or something, but it was like backing up water into the basement where they kept their stock, but they kept their stock like on pallets and stuff. But there was a few things on the floor that got wet, and he was asking me if I could come over there and get it unstopped stuff, because I at that time I had a plumbing business, and I said, yeah, I can be over there in a while that day. And then he said, well, you need to hurry up because it's I don't know what he said. I think it's stopped up, but I can't figure out where the drain is. So I said, yeah, let me go get Mike, and me and Mike could come over there, but you're going to have to hook us up when we get over there. Once we get it took care of, you're going to have to take care of us. And I didn't mention no price or anything. I just told him like that. And he was like, yeah, he called me Marvin. He said, yeah, Marvin, anything you want, man. Just help me get this thing straightened out, because if not, I'm going to have to call a plumbing company and they're going to charge me a fortune. And I was like, all right, well, I got you. And so anyways, I went and got Mike. Me and him went over there, and at that time, Sherry was wondering why I came to get him, because a lot of times if I went over there, if he left, she came with us, But I was telling her that, that we just going to the Jim Pollard to unstop their drainage, and then we're going to come back, because really we was all friends, but we was all party buddies too. We all party together all the time. Uh, but anyways, me and him went over there, got it undone, and then we actually cleaned up the basement. Swept up, mopped, and then after that, I told him, I said, you could just give. Mike 50, me 50, and give us a case of 40s, you know. And he said, all right, that sounds fair. That sounds fair. And so he hooked us up with that. And then we went back to Mike's house and hung out on the front porch and had some drinks, stuff like that. And then at this time, we hanging out. I met Sherry and Mike, Sherry Soulsby's and Mike Davis' house. And then Liz, and this is a girl that I knew from Trumbull Avenue because she lived next door to me on Elm Street. And she shows up and she got this big dude with her. And I ain't seen her in like years. But she knew who I was, and I knew who she was, But anyways, she was like, what's up, Malcolm? And I was like, nothing. What you doing? I said, well, you lost, ain't you? And she said, what you mean? I said, where you staying at now? She said, I live off of Michigan Avenue. And I was like, oh, all right. I thought you still lived off of Trumbull. She's like, no, I moved away from there a long time ago. And I knew her. I knew Liz. I knew her two brothers and her sister. And I had met all of them on Elm Street back in the day. And Liz has always been a cool girl. I've always liked her. And, I ain't never heard nothing, bad about her or anything like that. And she was also friends with Sherry. And she was also friends with a lady I used to be with. And so she was a good girl. And I ain't never heard anybody say anything bad about her or anything like that. So, and from what I know of her, she's a good girl, But that's the first time I met her old man, and he's a big dude, And I don't know how long she'd been with him at that point. I know they were together for a long time, but I don't know at that point when I met him at Sherry and Mike's house. I'm not for sure how long they were together, but I didn't know about dude. Be honest with you, I mean, my ex-old lady used to go to her house a lot, and on the weekends, spend the night and all that, and she never mentioned Liz's old man, but I guess the subject never really came up, so. But I do know she used to go out there and stay with her. And then I think one time Liz lived like on the line at like Dearborn, out Michigan Avenue. I think it was like might have been Dearborn. I'm not sure. I think there was a Kmart out there or something like that. But anyway, she lived out Michigan Avenue, and then she lived off of Michigan Avenue in Detroit too. So she's lived in different places, but that was the first time I seen her in a long time. I think I ran into her one time at a liquor store on Michigan Avenue, and but it was just brief, hello, goodbye, stuff like that. But like I said, Liz has always been a good girl as far as I know, and she ended up, growing up and having children and stuff like that. So, but it's just something. It's amazing that you people that you grew up around, like on Trumbull, and then years pass, and then you run into them again, like in a totally different area, totally different neighborhood, stuff like that. It's just kind of deja vu, I guess. You know what I mean? But at that time on military, we used to have a good time at that house. And this is a white house that's right by the train viaduct on military. And we used to hang out there a lot. And then if not, we'd be hanging out at my place. And at that time, I was staying in two different, well, actually three different places. Because I stayed on Hamman and military. Then I stayed on Cecil. And then I also stayed on Woodmere. So, sometimes I was like very close in the neighborhood. And then Woodmere Cemetery, if people's familiar with Detroit, it's still in Detroit, but it's just a little ways away from military and Otis and stuff like that. And sometimes we'll walk it, stuff like that. And sometimes we would drive. It depends. But mainly we all got together, and if we wasn't partying at my house or Mike and Sherry's house, we'd be at Bobby and Gail's house. We have went over to Susie's house, and I remember the first time I went over Susie's house, she had lived on Otis and military in the back apartment downstairs. And one time we had a party at Susie's house. This is Susie David. This is Mike David and Bobby David's sister. And we had a party at her house, and it was just close-knit people that was there, it wasn't no strangers or nothing like that. Anyway, we had a party there, and used to on the weekends, everybody would get together and round up, whatever, and decide what they're going to go buy to drink and just have a little get-together or whatever. I remember one time, at that particular time, they went and got some stuff called ouzo. And this is white liquor, but it tastes like black licorice. So it's nasty. so so the women decided, to make a chaser to go with it. They just decided to make chocolate milk and then put the liquor inside the chocolate milk. So that's what happened. And I remember somebody got sick and in the bathroom and threw up in the bathroom bathtub. And then later that night, everybody was like, I don't know what happened, but everybody was like in bed, and I don't know if it was from the music playing or what, but I know it was me, my girlfriend, Mike, Sherry, Mark Allen, Susie, it might have been Bob too. But anyways, I remember being in the bedroom and we was crashing out, and then the police came for some reason. I don't know if somebody called the police for loud music or what, but they came, they opened the bedroom door, shined a flashlight in there, and then they left, you know. So I really didn't know what that was about, but the only thing I could figure out is the music was loud and somebody called the police. That was the only thing I could actually figure out, and as time passed, she moves out of that apartment and she moves over. I want to say it was McGraw. It might have been Cecil. It might have been McGraw. I'm not for sure. It's one of them streets over there. She lived down the street on the other side of Michigan Avenue, and we had went over there. We went over there a few times, but I remember the first time I went over there, I always thought Susie was a pretty girl too, and then she had a daughter that was young, and I told her, I said, when your daughter grows up, because she had like dark hair and dark complexion, like, I said, when your daughter grows up, she's going to be a pretty girl. And then now she is grown, and she is a pretty girl right now, a pretty woman. But anyways, so the first time we went over there was some dude staying there. I don't know if he was just a roommate or if it was a dude she was seeing or what. I don't remember. But he was a dude that knew karate, and he played in tournaments, and he had a lot of trophies and stuff like that. So she had a lot of his trophies in the living room. And I don't recall if it really was her boyfriend or if it was just a roommate. I want to say she said he was just a roommate, but I'm not for sure. But Susie, she's always been a sweet girl. Her sister's been a sweet girl. Just her whole family. And I met her mom and dad. I've been to their mom and dad's house plenty of times on military. And her mom showed me pictures of her with famous people, like singers and stuff like that. And I don't know if she knew them personally or she just, had met them at these times and they took the pictures. I really don't recall that. But I know me and Mike, when we used to hang out, sometimes we'd be behind his mom's house. You could go down the alley and just pull in the backyard because they didn't have a fence back there. And me and him used to pull back there and, drink some 40s, shoot the breeze, stuff like that. And at this time, Mike and Bob's dad and Susie's dad, they had an old car in the back of the backyard. And I want to say it's like a 60 something model. And but then they ended up giving it to Bobby. And when we was parked behind the apartment, well, actually it's a house. When we was parked behind the house, me and Mike was just talking about all different kinds of stuff. And he brought up that car, and he said he told his parents a long time ago that he wanted that car. But he said for some reason they didn't give it to me, they gave it to Bobby. And he felt a certain kind of way about that. And I don't know if it's because he asked for it, and instead of them giving it to him, they gave it to his older brother. But I do remember that as time passed, he was telling me that. He told me a whole lot of other stuff too, but he told me that, he just felt like his mom and dad just favored Bobby over him, and he felt a certain kind of way about it, is what he was telling me, And then I told him, I was like, well, look, bro, I said, I could see where you're coming from, but, if he's the oldest kid, he's like the firstborn. I said, that could have something to do with it, I'm not for sure. And then he said that it could have been that, or it could have been he had got in trouble with the law and stuff like that, and they had to bail him out of jail and stuff like that. So he said that could have played a part in it, But regardless, he was, I don't know. He just felt like he got cheated out the car. I guess because he asked for it. And I don't know if he asked for it when he was a real young man. He didn't tell me when he asked for it, but he said he asked for it a long time ago. And instead of them, giving it to him, they gave it to his brother, and he said it made him mad, And nothing against his brother, because he loved his brother, but it was just a thing that, he just felt, that he asked for, and he felt because, eventually their dad got where they couldn't drive, So, the car was out in the backyard, and eventually he just turned it loose to, to Bob. And I don't know, I don't know if Mike ever asked Bob, did he go over there and ask for the car, or they just gave it to him? We never got into it, but that was just something that, me and Mike was talking about. And Mike told me a lot of stuff, a lot of stories and stuff like that. And he just had a lot of stuff to get off his chest, and me and him were pretty tight. So, he told me a lot of things, and he also told me that when he first started going with Sherry, he had broke up with her, and there was another chick in the neighborhood that had an apartment above Bobby and Gail, and they lived on the corner of Otis and Military at the time. And he said he lived with that girl for a while, and you know, then he said he ended up getting back with Sherry, stuff like that, you know. But I believe this is before they had children and stuff like that. This incident is what he's talking about. You know, it's before they had kids, I believe. But because there was sometimes I was in and out. You know, sometimes I would be hanging for a while, and then sometimes I would, you know, doing something else. And then I would come back. You know, things like that. So this is what had happened when he shared an apartment with that girl. I wasn't around. He was just telling me about it. And this is after I had left, and then when I came back, he was telling me, you know, because he had told me, he told me this story that he had started running with some guys, and you know, started getting in trouble and stuff like that. So really, he was better off with Sherry Sosby, because when he was with her, that I know of, he never got put in jail or anything like that when he was with her. You know. And then another thing is, after I left the neighborhood and I was gone, and then somebody in the neighborhood ended up sending a message saying that that a lot of things happened in the neighborhood. And you know, I don't know what I still try to figure out what they did after I left. Because I know when we was all together, all we was doing is just partying as far as alcohol, and then smoking cigarettes or